Guys, welcome back to another Brokowski's YouTube video. Today we got our top 24 RBs for week 2 of fantasy football. And guys, all of our extra rankings are on our Patreon. If you want to check that out, that would be awesome. Let's get right into the rankings. Our number 1 RB for week 2, it's Jonathan Taylor. Last week he had over 160 rushing yards. He got in the end zone, had over 27 fantasy points. He's going against the Jaguars. We expect the Colts to be up in this game, run JT a lot. We love him as our RB1. At number 2, also in S tier, we got Christian McCaffrey. He was a little bit disappointing last week, had under 60 total yards. He did get in the end zone, but it wasn't the normal CMC game we're all used to seeing. But this week, we still think he has super high upside. The matchup also isn't phenomenal. The Giants did shut down Derrick Henry last week, but he is still CMC, still has super high upside. And boys, we got one more player in S tier. It's Austin Ekeler. Last week, again, yes, he was a little disappointing. Had less than 12 fantasy points, only had 18 touches, only had 4 targets. But with Keenan Allen out, we love the high-scoring game against the Chiefs. Should be lots of points scored. Ekeler should get a ton of targets, and we think he's an S tier player for week 2. At number 4, and the first player in A tier, we got Saquon Barkley. He is currently the RB1 in fantasy. He had the best week out of any running back last week. His upside is super high. He's versing the Panthers, who don't have the greatest run defense. Love the matchup. Love the upside for Saquon this week. Our next player in A tier and our 5th running back on the week, it's Dalvin Cook. Last week, he put up over 13 fantasy points, which is decent, but we really do like the matchup. The Eagles let Swift run all over them. Jamal Williams even got in the end zone. We love Dalvin Cook to get a touchdown and be very solid for week 2. At number 6, we got Joe Mixon. He put up over 20 fantasy points last week, and he's going against the Cowboys, who Leonard Fournette ran all over them. The run defense did not look great. Mixon also might not have T. Higgins in this offense, might get even more touches. Love Mixon this week. Our number 7 player on the week is Derrick Henry. Last week, he was very disappointing. Couldn't get in the end zone against the Giants. Did have decent rushing yards, but also almost has no PPR upside. This week against the Bills, we hate the matchup. We expect the Titans to be down in this game. They should, obviously, they're still going to run Derrick Henry, but they might not run him to the absolute ground. If he doesn't get in the end zone, he doesn't have super high PPR upside. That's why he's a bit lower on our rankings. At number 8, and the last running back in A tier, we got DeAndre Swift. He ran all over the Philadelphia Eagles last week, and this week he's going against Washington. And James Robinson had a really good week against them last week. Love the upside, love the PPR upside. DeAndre Swift is a great option this week. Our first player in B tier is Javonte Williams. He was a beast last week because he had 12 targets and 11 catches. We expect this week the Broncos to run the ball a bit more against the Texans. I think they're going to feed him on the ground. Obviously, Melvin Gordon's still there, but Javonte with his PPR upside, he could get in the end zone this week. We love him for week 2. Our second player in B tier, it's James Conner. He's versing the Raiders this week, who were awful against the run last season. Great matchup. Plus, James Conner looked like a bell cow back last week. He was getting fed. Yes, the Cardinals were down big time, but we expect this game to be more competitive. Expect more touches for James Conner. And next up, at number 11, we have Leonard Fournette. He was a beast on the ground last week against the Cowboys. Had over 100 rushing yards. Only did have 2 catches. But this week against the Saints, we love the matchup. Last time he versed the Saints, he got a ton of targets. We expect this ground game to still be very good, and Leonard Fournette's great for week 2. Next up in B tier, we also got Alvin Kamara. He was pretty awful last week. Did get a bit of a rib injury, which is a little bit concerning, but if he plays, he still should be a great option. First in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, same game as the Leonard Fournette game. Alvin Kamara always has great upside. Even though he wasn't great last week, still like his upside for this week. The first player in C tier is Najee Harris. Yes, he did have an injury at the end of week 1, but we do expect him to be ready for week 2. The Patriots defense last year was 22nd against running backs. Pretty good matchup if you say so myself, but Najee didn't have a lot of volume, didn't have a ton of carries. The touchdown did save him in week 1. That's why he is lower on our rankings. And at RB14, going against the Jets, Nick Chubb. He had a solid week last week, but it was Kareem Hunt who stole the show in regards to fantasy production. Again, we expect the Browns to run the ball a ton this week, which obviously gives Chubb touchdown upside. Like him as a solid high RB2 this week. And at number 15, we have Antonio Gibson. He's going against the Lions, who last week the Eagles just had 4 different players get rushing and touchdowns against them. Also, Antonio Gibson, surprisingly, is getting a lot of PPR work. Week 1, he had 7 catches for over 70 receiving yards. He had 20 fantasy points. We love Gibson for week 2. Next up, also in C tier, we got Aaron Jones. He was pretty disappointing last week. Definitely expected him to get more points than A.J. Dillon, but it was Dillon who stole the show in regards to fantasy production. But this week, we do expect Aaron Jones to have more points than Dillon. Aaron Jones has always played really well against the Chicago Bears, and he still is the main receiving back, even though Dillon still gets PPR upside. And next, in C tier, we got Kareem Hunt. Last week, again, he stole the show from Nick Chubb. This week, we do like Nick Chubb a little more because we think the Browns will run more against the Jets. But Kareem Hunt still gets rushing attempts. He will still get catches, and we still do like him for week 2. And the last player in C tier, again, is Aaron Jones' teammate, A.J. Dillon. He did steal the show last week with having much more fantasy points and much more production than Aaron Jones. Again, we do like Aaron Jones more this week. Still love Dillon because they are in a 50-50 split. Our first player in D tier is Cordero Patterson. He had an amazing week 1, over 20 fantasy points. He had 22 carries and 120 rushing yards, along with 3 receptions. We do like him a bit less this week because he is going against the Rams. They are going to be losing in the game. Maybe he'll get more catches, but we think he'll get less rushing attempts. Still, though, love Patterson as a low-end RB2. And at RB20, we got David Montgomery. He does drop down on this list as Khalil Herbert did steal a decent amount of touches from him, but last week's game was in a complete rainstorm. It was a little hard to take a lot from that game. Montgomery is still a pretty safe option at running back. Again, another low-end RB2. And next up at RB21, we have Darrell Henderson. We love the matchup. The Rams should be up against the Falcons, meaning they run the ball a ton. But for Henderson owners, hopefully he still is the RB. There's still so much unknown for Los Angeles, and they could be in a split. We just never know. And at running back 22, in the first player in E tier, we got Ezekiel Elliott. Yes, he lost Dak Prescott. Dak is not going to be playing this week or for the next couple weeks, and the matchup isn't great. The Bengals have been great against the run recently, and last season when Dak was not the quarterback in his Cooper Rush, Zeke only had 11 fantasy points. Not horrible, but definitely not amazing. Again, bad matchup, no Dak Prescott. Don't love Zeke this week. At RB23, we have Clyde EdwardsHelaire. He balled out last week, had over 22 fantasy points, had 2 touchdowns, but the problem is he only played 39% of snaps. Yes, we do expect him to not play garbage time, but even during the first, second, even third quarter when the game was close, they ran Pacheco, they ran McKinnon. He only also had 7 rushing attempts. We do like Hilaire, but we don't absolutely love him. And the last running back in this video at 24, it's Jeff Wilson. Again, unfortunately, Elijah Mitchell is hurt, going to miss about the next 2 months. But that does mean Jeff Wilson is going to be the RB1 for San Francisco. The RB1 always has value in this offense. Super high volume running offense. Jeff Wilson should be super solid in week 2. And boys, thanks so much for watching the video. If you guys want more rankings like our top 36 running backs, we only went over 24 in this video. Top 48 wide receivers, we're going to come out with top 20 QBs and 20 tight ends. Check out our Patreon. We're also answering every single question you guys ask us on there. Thanks so much for watching the video. We'll see y'all next time.